Maintenance Optimization Consultants. This webinar is being presented jointly by Performa Inc., an architectural and engineering consulting company headquartered in DeFerredd, Wisconsin, with offices in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Atlanta, Georgia, as well as Building Maintenance Optimization Consultants, otherwise known as BMOC, an asset management consulting company headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Today's presenters and subject matter experts are from BMOC, Jonathan Thomas, and from Performa, Matt Merrick. This webinar is being recorded, and each attendee will be emailed the link for the recording and a PDF of the presentation by the end of the day today. To help minimize background noise, we have placed all attendees on mute. However, we encourage questions, so please submit your questions via the chat box. We will have a Q&A session immediately following the presentation. So let's get the show on the road. I am pleased to introduce to you our first speaker, John Thomas. John, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Lit. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Thomas. I'm a professional industrial engineer. I've been a facilities asset management programmer since 1998. My experience lies in preventive maintenance programming, asset inventory applications, facility condition assessments, capital planning strategy, and then facilities management, resource estimation, and benchmarking. And I've served higher education, hospital, and government institutions across the country. I founded BMOC in 2015 to optimize the value of workforce management assets and the CMMS in delivering facility services. Our service package is called Facilities Operations Readiness Support, and it can be applied to new construction and existing buildings. We're headquartered in Atlanta, and we currently have clients across the country.
So thanks, Jonathan. My name is Matt Merrick. I'm the co-presenter in this presentation today. The Vice President of Capital Strategies at Performa. Started out my career as an electrical engineer, and now at Performa, one of my primary responsibilities is to help link our clients' capital assets to their organizational strategies. And one of the ways we do that is by having developed and leading our corrective maintenance program, which is a program that we use to help our clients systematically identify, prioritize, quantify, and manage deferred maintenance projects across a portfolio of facilities. Just a little brief overview of Performa. We're an integrated architecture and engineering firm representing all disciplines of engineering and architecture. Our purpose is to help give our clients purpose, space to thrive through the built environment. And we have 3 locations, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Atlanta, Georgia. We're celebrating our 25th year. Our founding partner, who started Performa 25 years ago, he actually comes out of higher ed and was a former director of facilities for a large liberal arts college before he had started Performa. And when he always said, it's not about the buildings per se, but rather what the buildings can do for people. So as design architects and engineers, people are at the heart of what we do, including the people who are tasked to manage the facilities that we design.
Here is the agenda for today's awesome presentation. The theme of our webinar is empowerment. We will begin by introducing the concept of asset management, then dive into the details of how to empower yourself through the asset life cycle. This will be followed by a brief summary of the key takeaways and the ever-popular Q&A session. Now let's start with what is asset management? Much of today's material is grounded in these 2 sets of standards that focus on asset management. The first of which is the ISO 55000 Asset Management Standards. The second is ANSI-APA's Total Cost of Ownership for Facilities Asset Management Standards 1000-1 and 1000-2. As you develop the foundation of your own asset management program, we would encourage you to familiarize yourself with these 2 standards. And the links that are available on the presentation will go directly to a web page where you can order those specific standards. In an effort to get us all on the same page, we wanted to review the ISO 55000 definition of asset management. Asset management enables an organization to examine the need for and performance of assets and asset systems at different levels. Additionally, it enables the application of analytical approaches towards managing an asset over the different stages of its life cycle, which can start with the conception of the need for the asset through its disposal and includes the management of any potential post-disposal liabilities. Now back to the show. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Liz. So what we're going to walk the participants through today is through the different stages of the asset management life cycle. We're going to identify the opportunities for empowerment through those stages. And the reason BMOC and Performa have collaborated on this is we bring a different frame of reference to asset management in terms of the areas that we focus on in our work. And Performa is going to be focused much more on the capital project standpoint, planning, design, construction, and to an extent asset renewal. And Jonathan, do you want to talk a little bit about your frame of reference that you bring from BMOC?
Sure, thank you, Matt. So assets are the lowest common denominator for any organization, the physical assets I'm referring to. Sure, you've got people and software and systems in place, but they are there to manage those physical assets. In this webinar, we intend to present the often enterprise-level asset management conversation in the facilities planning, design, and management context. So here we're contrasting two modes of operation. Everyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with it. And in reality, most people here are somewhere in between these two. But on the left side, we've got the firefighter. The firefighter's taking the call and letting the world around them dictate the day-to-day operations and even capital reinvestment. On the right, we have the fire marshal, preventing breakdowns and beginning the asset management path with the end in mind. This is management, more marshaling and less fighting. So in reality, a survey by Plant Engineering magazine indicates that 61% of facilities maintenance organizations adopt a run-to-fail maintenance strategy. So that's full-on firefighter. And if they're doing what's on the left, they're probably failing at asset management. It's not maintenance, it's emergency repair, which is essentially repeated failure management in most cases. It's marked by high campus deferred renewal backlogs or deferred maintenance, capital projects that are underfunded for renovations, but new buildings are still added without any incremental staff additions. Facilities management is understaffed and inefficiently scheduled. Software application utilization is low, and attempts to plan and schedule work are frequently interrupted. And this results in low credibility with customers, administration, and even internally. The mode of operations on the left costs roughly 2.5 times the straight cost of repairs of the mode of operations on the right, and that's just the straight cost. When considering all the collateral damage and the impact to facilities operations and customer service, that cost can go up to, I've seen, 9 times the cost. So the fire marshal's concern is not only our behaviors, it starts with our environment. So today we're going to build the case for and identify a path to being the fire marshal as the defining characteristic of the FM organization.
So to further illustrate that analogy, if you're looking at the firefighter analogy, that's more on the left in terms of the managing assets, the fire chief on the right. And it's really in terms, it goes to your frame of reference and what are you working toward? Yes, there's day-to-day activities that need to be done, but are they done in alignment with a long-term strategy in mind? Yes, there's a lot of conversations around upfront costs, especially when you're looking at new capital projects, but are they weighed in the context of whole life costs and what it's going to cost to manage your assets? Facilities management, it's a very important role in any institution and organization. And does it feel siloed, or is it integrated as it's supposed to be with all of the strategic planning that happens within that organization and brings that component of integrated facilities planning to the organization? So those are the types of things we want to explore today and make sure we're breaking down those barriers.
So to become more like the fire marshal, we recommend developing a strategic asset management program. In my career as a facilities asset management professional, I've never been handed or referred to a formal SAMP by one of my clients. This doesn't mean that they don't have an asset management program. It just usually means that it's informal. It's usually comprised of a piecemeal of all of the following in some combination. A piecemeal approach divided by silos and fiefdoms. It's enveloped in an enterprise level asset management approach and maybe stuck up too high in the organization. Parts have been established by a CMMS vendor during an implementation. Parts of it have been developed ad hoc when there's a particular sponsor on the staff who wants to drive it. I've also observed that the asset management programming can be very heavily focused on capital renewal and leave maintenance operations kind of on its own. So if the SAMP isn't officially the foundation of your operations, the good news is that your initial effort may simply be gathering items like mission statements, policies, workflows, training manuals, etc. So let's talk about the benefits of having a SAMP. So first, we've got alignment among technical, managerial, and supervisory and planning staff, reduced overlap and friction. Next, resiliency to software and staff changes. Next, optimal labor application, applying the right maintenance, repair, and renewal at the right time. Having the right parts ready and on time. Increased productive or wrench time, less time traveling, searching for documents and waiting. These are big time parasites. So not only will assets be more reliable, but they will provide their design service while using the least energy possible. Next, produce reporting in which you are confident and then make effective long-term decisions based on good data. Optimal software utilization. Can you tell I like the term optimize or optimal? So utilize your software applications to the fullest extent within your strategic mission. And then finally, through having information and the confidence in it, be transparent internally with peers and customers and build trust and credibility throughout.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you can really see how having that strategic asset management plan can help elevate that role in the organization in terms of the credibility that it brings, and leveraging all that information and data into master planning and to new capital projects. So this is a very good thing.
Thank you, Matt. So today we're going to, so the SAMP encompasses all facets of your facilities operations. Today we're going to hone in on tasks that are typically viewed to be heavy lifts and often viewed as so heavy that they get oversimplified. And then we're going to make recommendations on how to succeed in getting these lifts completed. The first is new construction. Next is the CMMS, followed by asset inventory. And to do that, the asset hierarchy and classification, PM procedures, KPIs, and capital renewal.
So the way we want to focus on how we deliver these strategies to you is we want to walk you through the asset life cycle and talk about the opportunities for empowerment through that asset life cycle. So we'll go through the life cycle sequentially. However, we recognize that you have assets in various stages of this life cycle, and the principles we share will be relevant regardless of what stage your assets happen to be in with that life cycle, which will run the gamut. The first phase in the asset management cycle is the planning and design portion, or the conception of that asset. And this is where we really want to stress that asset management really begins in the planning and design phase. As architects and engineers, we're often brought to the table with the blank sheet of paper and asked to design something new. And we see opportunities for facilities management to play a really big role in that. That's not always exercised. I'd say sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. Some of the opportunities that we see is really getting you involved with the process with the information you bring through your asset management plan to evaluate, to share the construction standards. Oftentimes we're not even given an idea of construction standards and have to kind of develop them on the fly. And when you're often talking about first costs more than you are about life cycle costs, that's another red flag that there might not be a good asset management program in place that's helping to direct the bringing on of new assets. So just having those things in place will improve the process significantly, because really we want to help get you what you need instead of you getting what you get. Because that's oftentimes what ends up happening. A new building goes into service and you get what you get, instead of having the conversations to ensure that you're getting what you need. So FM Ops needs to have a seat at that design table. And then also, Jonathan, if you want to weigh in on this, operations and maintenance budgeting that's the opportunity to have that conversation is in the planning and design phase.
Yeah, and it's also a great way to stimulate the asset management program. So during this phase, I recommend that a formal budget and staff request be made in terms of service level tiers, so the whole organization is on the same page with expectations. And it also needs to be reflective of your actual fully loaded costs. This is as opposed to using a rule of thumb metric or other metric that may be outdated by 25 years or more, which I have actually seen at client sites. Further, this request should be made in the context of your SAMP. And if you don't have a SAMP, a new building coming online is a great opportunity to get it started.
To put an exclamation point on the importance of starting the asset management discussion at the planning and design stage, I want to read an excerpt directly from the ANSI-APA Total Cost of Ownership Standard. This is directly from the ANSI-APA 1000-1 standard. The optimum time for application of TCO, Total Cost of Ownership, occurs during the planning and design phase of procuring or building an asset. John, back to you.
Thank you, Lit. So during the build and acquire, so now we're going to discuss the cradle component of the asset lifecycle, so the build and acquire phase. So during this phase, we recommend third-party commissioning as a crucial part of asset investiture. Making sure your assets work as designed is obviously very important. But in addition to commissioning the physical systems, we recommend that your asset data be commissioned in a sense as well. Asset data should be collected fully during the construction phase and with the intention of building a preventive maintenance program for it and having it loaded in your CMMS before the building is turned over. Anything less is late and gets your organization off on the wrong foot when it comes to managing your assets during its life.
That's a great point, Jonathan, because a lot of times what we see is the actual management of that facility. It doesn't begin when that facility or before that facility is put into service. It might start really at the end of the warranty period, which could be 2 years after the building's already in service. And along with those warranty requirements, having your asset management program in place can help to define those instead of, again, getting what you get in terms of warranty. You can start to help define specific warranty requirements prior to the bid process. But to your point, Jonathan, we can do a lot better than what the industry typically sees, which is binders of O&M manuals that are delivered at the end of a project and put into a file drawer somewhere. Now, maybe today that's a DVD, but it's still the same concept. We're able to really deliver a very good as-built deliverable with the help of individuals that can help bring that asset data together, where you could have a 3D model of your building that's delivered to you from the architecture and engineers through Revit or some other BIM technology, and have that asset data built into that as-built deliverable that can then be leveraged into your CMMS or wherever else you might end up using it. So that's another opportunity. And then also at the start of or the end of a build project and the start of that cradle of that asset, you have very good cost data on that asset as well, and you're able to get the current replacement value pretty easily defined at that point. So the current replacement value is important because it helps to communicate, first of all, to the organization that facilities are a very valuable assets and can sometimes be its largest liability if it's not properly managed. And physical assets, especially in higher ed, are commonly an institution's largest asset outside of endowment. So understanding that current replacement value brings the value of those assets in terms of cost. And it's really the total amount of or expenditure in current dollars required to replace the organization's asset to their optimal condition. And it helps to inform prioritization, because the next metric that you look at that's very important is the condition index. And that's really the cost of repair of that asset as it depreciates versus its current replacement value. So there's the FCI, that's an entire facility condition index, and that helps to put the facility in a rank in terms of its overall condition. But then you need to understand also the condition index for the assets themselves, because they will provide those good metric for the value of that asset as it currently sits. Now, if you're actually looking at the value of that asset against other assets in your portfolio, you need to bring in other conditions for value around that asset, because you need to be able to normalize value against all the other assets you're charged to manage. So a good example of that is you might have an air handler in one building that's exact same as the air handler in another building. And if one building is more important in terms of function, you're going to want to prioritize that higher in the criticality scale, even though they might be the exact same units, the exact same age. And a few ideas of how you can do that. First of all, the condition index is an obvious one. If the worse the condition, the higher the priority it would get in your asset management plan. But there's some other factors you need to think about as well. The utilization, the importance of the building that it's in. It could be occupant hours. It could be whether or not that's just a highly important functional building on campus from a subjective standpoint. Also understanding that not every asset in a building is of equal importance to the function of that building. So the relative importance of components in the building itself. So if you have a roof that's fully depreciated, for example, and a carpet, you're going to want to put those dollars toward the roof first before you do the carpet, because it's more critical to the function of that building. And age, of course, is a determining factor as well. But just understanding that cost and condition are not the only metrics that determine value. With that, I want to hand the floor back to you, Jonathan, who I'll ask if you can walk us through the operate, maintain portion of the asset lifecycle.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. So now we're going to discuss the life of the asset. So this pertains to the life of new assets in the context of new construction, which we've discussed up to this point. However, it also pertains to the assets that are currently operating within your existing portfolio. And this can be applied retroactively. So it's difficult to have a discussion about the life of the asset without discussing the CMMS. So the CMMS is computerized maintenance management software. It is a key component of the SAMP. It supports the management of your facilities, labor, materials, and assets. And we highly recommend that you commit to making it store your asset database of record. You'll have other competing databases like CMMS and capital planning applications, building automation systems and capital planning applications, but the CMMS is best suited to help you manage all of your physical assets. So to give some context of the CMMS within the SAMP, take this chart from top to bottom. First, we have managing the organization. This is the general management of the organization that can be more effectively accomplished when the lower level asset management activities are carried out successfully. Next, we have the asset management program, where products of the asset management systems are utilized to coordinate integrated asset management activities. Item 3, this is where the CMMS resides, the asset management systems. It consists of software, policies, procedures, workflows, etc., needed to effectively manage the facilities. This is, I propose the CMMS has the most significant impact on facilities management systems within this level, even greater than the building automation system, since it has an impact not only on energy, but the value of your labor and physical assets as well, even when those assets are not connected. And then lastly, we've got the foundation, the asset portfolio. These are your physical assets, buildings and their components. Again, this is the lowest common denominator of your operation. The effectiveness of your CMMS is directly proportional to how reflective this database is of reality. So the CMMS is on the second lowest level of the asset management program. What I've seen in organizations is the CMMS can really almost drive the asset management program for our clients. While the CMMS is very important, it shouldn't, if the CMMS is replaced, it shouldn't completely overturn the operations. It's valuable. It should be set up and operated thoroughly, but it shouldn't turn your organization upside down if it is replaced. Your SAMP can help with that since it provides structure around the CMMS. And a sound asset database that underpins the CMMS can be transferred between CMMS applications painlessly if it is accurate. So don't let your CMMS tail wag the asset management dog. So these are some highlights of sentiments we frequently observe at client sites. I'd like you to take a moment to read this and see if any of them are familiar to you. And I encourage you at this point to add any questions or comments you can to the chat. We've got a Q&A session at the end, and really what makes these webinars highly productive is when the attendees participate. And I'm sure you've got some things to build on here. But again, I haven't observed this at just 1 or 2 sites. These are fairly common observations. So lastly, all of this leads to the CMMS being underutilized by 54%, according to a survey by Reliability Web. According to Plant Services, only 24.5% of the average maintenance worker's working day is spent performing productive tasks. 20.9% of wasted time is spent traveling to different places in the facility, with an additional 19.8% waiting on instructions. So in my experience, the asset database is analogous to a foundation for a building. Imagine the CMMS being the building, the asset database being the foundation. In my experience, a corrupt asset database is pervasive in the marketplace and is the root cause of CMMS underutilization, organizational distrust of the CMMS, premature CMMS change, and failed new CMMS adoption. So a CMMS with a corrupt asset database is akin to a house built on no foundation or on sand on the right. So now we are going to get into some details. This is a webinar where we want you to be able to take some good information and put it to work for you. Note that we will be posting a PDF of the presentation and a recording. I reiterate, though, if you have comments or questions, please add them to the chat. So how to get started getting that asset inventory built up soundly. Get started strategically. When setting the granularity level for your assets, consider assets based on the frequency of work order assignment. Prioritize assets that are going to get PM work orders, and also corrective repair and renewal. Next would be corrective repair and renewal, and lastly would be renewal only. But I stress that 100% of the building components should be captured at the lowest level of the hierarchy. You can use a combination of continuous and discrete assets. Continuous assets would be system level assets. Discrete assets would be actually bar-coded assets. So next, I recommend that assets be physically labeled when applicable. This is even for CMMS applications that are GIS based. Sometimes assets can be clustered together, and having that label on there provides confidence when applying labor and reduces false closeouts. Next, use a simple serialized unique identifier schema rather than smart numbers for your asset IDs. Smart numbers can be a sequence of building number, part code of some sort, and then a sequence. Simple serialized is just the next number up. In my experience, the smart numbering applications cost 2.5 times more to apply since you have to visit the asset twice, and then you have another level of quality assurance and error that is entered into by having to build so that smart number together. Asset classification should be aligned with scheduled maintenance procedures. And then lastly, the asset grouping should be aligned with attribute UDF field name sets. So next, to actually go out and perform the asset inventory, you really want to focus on minimizing your time in the field and increasing accuracy at the same time. So first step would be to analyze any construction plans that are available, construction and renovation plans prior to field work. Next, know that data is portable now thanks to our cell phones. We can take very high quality, high resolution photos with our cameras. We can take pictures of the information systematically as our data collection process. Next, enter the data from the comfort and safety of an office using appropriate staff. You can take that data with you and enter it in the safety of an office. I know many CMMS applications offer an asset data collection mobile application. These are great for one-off assets to inventory or handfuls of assets. It's not tenable for mass asset inventory efforts. Next, load all of the developed data including the photos into the CMMS. So once the asset database is shored up, you can focus on scheduled maintenance, which is the best way to keep your labor application efficient. According to upkeep.com, 80% of maintenance personnel favor preventive maintenance, 80% of manufacturing plants use preventive maintenance, 10% or less of industrial equipment wears out, which means that mechanical failures are preventable. Companies save between 12 and 18% on PM over the firefighting approach. And according to the Department of Energy, companies save between 8 and 12% on predictive or preventive maintenance over preventive maintenance. So these days, we have a lot of best practices that are available. We recommend that a scheduled maintenance program be developed that includes the appropriate routine maintenance, preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance, best practice predictive maintenance, which is widely available now, and compliance-based maintenance. Next, these PM procedures or scheduled maintenance procedures should be characterized by technical accuracy. If staff is redlining 20% of those PM procedures when they go into the field, because they don't apply to that asset, you're losing the accountability needed to track your work orders. Next, the PM procedures need to be scalable across your portfolio. This means that you don't need to needlessly have a differentiation for similar assets just because a manufacturer is different. Next. So once you've got all this in order, keep your staff engaged in your CMMS application. Make the CMMS a conduit to O&M manuals and construction diagrams. Make it a source of reliable and actionable information and not just Big Brother. Prioritize good data management and providing accurate maintenance histories in support of troubleshooting in the field. Support accurate and expedient asset location through good information, photos, and the barcode. Next, provide accurate scheduled maintenance procedures. It will really help you build credibility with your technical staff. And then once all this is in order, allow for transparency and participation with your technical staff and the development of reliability-centered maintenance strategies. So next, we're going to talk about work order closeout. This is really where the rubber meets the road in applying data-informed management. So we recommend that all work orders, 100% of them, be closed out with your internal labor and your contract labor. We recommend that internal and contract applied maintenance be tracked in the same manner. Parts and materials should be on that work order as well, which we understand is a big hurdle in some cases. And lastly, the asset affected should be applied to the work order. For the preventive maintenance work order, this isn't difficult because it's applied proactively. For the corrective maintenance work order, there needs to be a workflow and training with the staff to get the appropriate asset assigned at closeout. So for corrective work orders, the condition in which the asset was found should be listed, as well as these other items in order to support future troubleshooting. Lastly, use your mobile applications for work order closeout. From OneUpkeep.com, only 52% of maintenance managers perceive that their technicians use this functionality. About 4 out of 10 organizations have technicians that are unnecessarily wasting time making trips to the shop, and 1 out of 10 organizations are not utilizing their CMMS for what it's primarily designed for. So next, establish work order closeout compliance criteria and track KPIs. Consider incentivizing work order closeout conformance. appoint a position to oversee quality assurance treatments for work orders, and perform other asset management functions. And now that you are walking, you can get to running by programming the following into your CMMS and asset management systems. Lockout, tagout procedures, planning, scheduling, and shutdown considerations, warranty management, reliability-centered maintenance processes, condition-based maintenance work management using IIoT and FDD technologies, asset failure mode selections, and disaster recovery modes of operations. So in addition to these aspects, leverage the CMMS to make informed repair-replace decisions. More and more CMMS applications fully support asset-based capital planning now. If yours doesn't, you can still leverage the CMMS by setting up a few attributes and custom reports listed here. However, ultimately, information in this system will allow for life cycle analysis to be applied prior to making costly repairs to an asset. We recommend that this functionality be leveraged and capital planning stakeholders use it for their purposes as well. Oftentimes, renewals that can be applied internally are completed in the operations budget. Leveraging the CMMS will allow these renewals to be visible by capital planning stakeholders, even if they aren't funded from their budget.
So thanks, Jonathan. That's a great segue into the final stage of the asset management lifecycle, which is the asset renewal stage. And this is, it's not always asset renewal. Sometimes it's asset disposal. But any asset that you have is going to need to be either renewed or disposed of. A typical facility has 55% of its current replacement value consisting of replaceable components. And you can see why that can start to build a significant backlog, because a typical O&M program has insufficient annual funding for large capital renewal projects. So those asset renewal projects are going to need to be defined, require additional funding, and that's why most institutions are challenged with significant deferred maintenance backlogs. But the reason this is important, among many others, is it's a strategic part of integrated facilities planning for your organization, the corrective maintenance and asset renewal. When we're embarking on a campus master plan with a client, for example, or even a new capital project, one of the questions we ask is about what does their deferred maintenance backlog and their strategic asset renewal look like, because that helps to inform a campus master plan, and a campus master plan informs all these other planning initiatives. So it's an integral part, and it needs to be done. Instead of doing it at that time, it's good to have it done continually and consistently as part of your mode of doing business. For example, a campus master plan, if that is being informed from the asset renewal plan that they're worse facilities, and then the campus master plan recommends tearing down a facility in 5 years, well, you're not going to want to put replacing a roof on that facility in your capital renewal plan. You're going to want to take that out and just maybe patch it up for the next 5 years and not invest the cost in replacing that roof. And on new capital projects where major renovations exist, you're also going to want to draw from that asset renewal plan to see just how much you need to claw into the infrastructure of that building in its major renovation project. So all this stuff informs each other and should be continuously updated. So in order to do that, we need to develop an effective capital renewal plan. And I'll walk through 4 steps on how this can be done and how we've seen it done in the past. First step being performing facility condition assessments. This is a good practice, even if you haven't a very effective asset program. Having the facility condition assessments done will help to test a lot of that data that you have within that program. But we like to say they should be 3 things: structured and comprehensive, so that you're taking the right team and actually assessing these assets from the top of the roof all the way to the edge of the site, so they're comprehensively done in a repeatable fashion. So you're looking at the same data the same ways every time in each facility, so that not only are you normalizing facility against facility, but also if you wanted to perform the same condition assessment 5 years down the road, you're still in an apples to apples comparison. And then finally, ensuring that the outcomes of these facility condition assessments result in very specific projects that inform both work orders and major capital projects that are actually realistic for the organization to achieve. We're not doing life cycle costs on pieces of drywall. They're actually projects that need to be done that are realistic and that will bring value to the institution. Any comments about that, Jonathan? Oh, Jonathan, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. You can really add some structure and consistency to your condition assessment by providing the FCA personnel with asset data to guide their assessment, and also give insight into the granularity that you are seeking, so that you're consistent in your operations and in your capital planning.
Yeah, thanks for saying that too, because we see the gamut, but more often than not, we see less data versus more data. And the more data that we have in embarking on these facility condition assessments, the better the end product will be. It's not unusual for us to walk into an institution that can provide us nothing, even in terms of drawings, where we're taking the emergency egress plans off the wall and copying them just so we have some point of reference to start what really is. They take our data and actually use it as the start of their asset management program, which is okay. You got to start somewhere, but ideally, the more data going into these, the more successful they can be. Because at the outcome of the facility condition assessment, you really want to be able to communicate a prioritized and quantified deferred maintenance backlog that is fully prioritized across all systems, across all buildings, and gives you that deferred maintenance backlog as well for planning purposes. Because when you see that backlog, you're going to have to figure out a way to capitalize it and request additional funding around it. And there's typically three different influences for capital spending in an institution. There's the maintenance and corrective maintenance side of things that you would use to draw down your deferred maintenance projects. There's capital towards there's finances toward new capital projects for new facilities, and that's typically segregated. And then there's finances towards programmatic changes, which that could just be an academic program requesting that, let's say, a conference room in a building be changed out into a laboratory or something of that nature. And where this can fall apart is when we're not disciplined about making sure these finances are as segregated as possible. So oftentimes what you'll see, especially on the programmatic changes, that same laboratory change out from the conference room, they expect maintenance to claw into their dollars to perform that project instead of funding that through a separate vehicle. And that just undermines what you need to do from a maintenance standpoint and ensuring that the institution has the funds that they need to keep things in good working order. Because at the end of the day, you're going to want to manage an asset renewal and replacement program. And that consists of the specific projects that are prioritized, not only in the facility that they are, but across the campus full of projects in terms of priority, and quantified so that you're able to direct resources for that given year. The facilities management has a lot of resources, and anything we can do to help increase utilization by good planning, the asset management program is going to help with, and this capital renewal program is going to help with, to direct all of that labor to high utilization. And then finally, you gain commitment in the institution through good communication, and whether it's through your asset management program, capital renewal program, and really they're one and the same, the commitment's going to, through the institution, is going to come through the communication that you bring. And it's providing the right information to the right audiences. So if I'm at the C-suite or the board level, I'm going to be most concerned about the total corrective backlog for the institution, seeing those executive summaries and budgetary projections year over year against that backlog. At the 1,000-foot level, I'm going to be, and the campus planner or the CFO, I'm going to be more interested in what are my corrective needs by building or by system or by priority, and looking at those 1, 3, 5-year budgetary projections And then at the functional level, again, it's going to be those specific, highly descriptive and prioritized corrective projects that are continually monitored and managed. So for key takeaways, we walked everyone through the asset life cycle and some opportunities for empowerment throughout that. I just want to summarize some key takeaways. First, talking about in the conception phase, ensuring that you have those well-defined construction standards and you can control what assets are installed in your portfolio. Using this opportunity to present budget and staffing requests at the conception phase and during the project planning phase for the service level tiers upon design, so that you're ensuring that you get adequate funding for managing a new asset that's coming into your portfolio. Prioritize being able to commence and track in your CMMS preventative maintenance work orders upon project turnover. So ensuring that when the project's turned over, you actually have those preventative maintenance activities at day one.
So next, in the life of the asset, engage in a CMMS optimization project. CMMS applications can cost organizations between $60,000 and $500,000 a year, and maybe even more. If you apply, say your CMMS is 55 or 50% utilized and you're spending $60,000 a year, if you spend $60,000 on a CMMS optimization effort, you've got a 2-year payback, and that's just in the realization of the value you're already paying for in your CMMS. It doesn't even include the operational efficiencies you'll gain. Next, maintain a sound asset database in your CMMS. I built a company based on the hypothesis that improving that asset database will help the organization realize so much more value in their entire operation. Make work order closeout a strategic priority. I can't stress this enough because it goes all the way from the work order closeout to the data that the facility manager is using to assess performance and demonstrate performance and communicate with their peers. Yes, so get the data correct and put your KPIs to work through the accurate reporting on demand. Get that reporting on time as well. Don't go through a gigantic data mining and amendment effort in order to get a report.
Yep, and then execute an integrated approach to capital project planning. So ensuring your major capital asset renewal projects are defined and inform the integrated facilities and master planning efforts for your organization. And then really being consistent and appropriate communication throughout the organization is going to be key to ensuring that you win over key stakeholders throughout the organization. And the only way you can do that is through engagement and communication and helping everyone to understand that they have an oar in the water when it comes to facilities management and capital renewal.
So next, compile a SAMP and put it to work for your organization. And finally, stop fighting fires. Be the asset manager.
So at this point, we just want to open up the floor for any Q&A. Lit, you might be on mute.
I am. I was going to say now it's time for our favorite segment, Q&A time. Thank you, Matt, for the reminder. It appears at this point we don't have any questions at this point, but we would sure like to see some coming in. And if we do get a lot coming in, we will answer as many as we can, and for those we don't get to, we will answer those and send the answers to everybody following the presentation. Here's a question. How do you see the general contractor's role in the life cycle of asset management? John, do you want to take that? Or I'm going to give that to you, Matt.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The general contractor's role will be whatever you define it to be. And unfortunately, that happens to be the case, only because you need to help them understand what it is that you need. Now, a general contractor will do contractually whatever you ask them to do. And there is some good about that and also some risk to that you need to at least be aware of. If you can help to define from your asset management program what the expectations are in terms of O&M deliverables, in terms of as-built documentation, even in terms of a highly detailed 3D model that has all the information in it, that's great. But ensure that someone's in your organization or even out of whatever it might be is intermediating that and ensuring that everything is happening the way it should be. Because the unfortunate thing is once a lot of the contractors are off the site, maybe not the general contractor, but certainly the subcontractors, it's very hard to get them engaged again. So as long as you're aware of that, you just need to be very clear and specific on what your requirements are.
And I would like to add that it's a question of specialization. Our economy is built on specialization, and my perspective is that the general contractor specializes in installing the asset ultimately, by means of subcontractors and an extensive network of support. But ultimately, their primary role is to install the asset, and if we can keep specialists working in within their specialization, we're going to get better long-term effects from it.
Yeah, John, I have a follow-up question for you related to this topic. There are some organizations that might say that we give the responsibility in the project documents for the general contractor to provide us with all of the asset information we need to plug into our CMMS. Is that sufficient?
So yeah, there's some of these approaches around. I think generally they result in the data being delivered in a very delayed manner, and also it takes a lot of rework going back with your own staff and validating. What ends up happening is general contractors will push the data development down to the lowest person on the totem pole. The data is cobbled together from second and third hand data sources, and it's just compiled together because the data they're working with can be outdated in many cases. So what you end up having to do is go out with your own staff and validate everything that's been delivered anyway. So at that point, why not just go straight to the source and get the data directly from the equipment and do it in advance and just get to the root of the problem quickly and efficiently.
Another question. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to add to that too. So that's the importance of having that intermediary. And if that person even resides on the general contractor side, that's fine. But it elevates the importance of the conversation to ensure you're getting what you need instead of just getting what you get.
Well, and then you have to, once you get one set, typically projects are competitively bid, and you get one set of contractors and general contractors on a job, or sorry, general contractor and subcontractors on a job. And once you train one in it, you have to keep retraining project to project to project, and that comes with a significant cost and subsequent error correction, and that's a rigorous process. Data has to be accurate, otherwise people are going to lose faith in it.
Another question, and this is probably for you, John. What is your preferred format for collecting asset data during construction?
My preferred format, we will apply, we've developed a schema that's based on the Uniformat 2 taxonomy. And again, I just stress that 100% of the assets I recommend being captured at the lowest level. This would include things like piping or systems like piping networks and ductwork and air distribution specialties. They should be mutually exclusive with each other, but they should all be captured on the lowest level along with your pumps, your chillers, your boilers, your air handlers. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Another question, is the conceptual bubble diagram stage too early to commence a SAMP?
The conceptual stage?
Is the conceptual stage of the bubble diagrams too early to commence a SAMP?
No, I believe that's so So we're talking about during project design. I think that's a great time to start to use that as a jumping off point for developing the SAMP, because a building can be a microcosm for your operations. And if you start with the one building with that focus, you can build a good model for your operations to include costs, staffing in your preventive maintenance program, all of your corrective maintenance extrapolations, et cetera, and then go and apply that to the rest of your campus.
Another question, what is the average % of construction costs for implementing a best practice SAMP? Do you have any thoughts on that, either of you?
Well, relative to the construction cost, I would say it's negligible.
I would agree. If you're talking about operations and maintenance budget for that building, that can often be compared to construction costs. But really, you're talking about a service, Jonathan, that would be negligible to a large capital project.
Oh yeah, but fractions of a percentage of the cost.
John, I have a question for you. On one of your slides, you talked about the numbering system for an asset. And I know, this can have a big impact. Not many people might realize that. But could you just spend a minute or two talking about serialized numbering versus SMART, just to address that question, because it is such a key point as you begin to develop your SAMP and your asset collection strategy?
Oh, sure. Thanks. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's funny because anecdotally, I've seen these lists of these part codes that people will apply, and they start out as a very nice little list of about 20 items. And over the course of about 3 years, you see how people will scribble on new ones and new ones and new ones. And eventually you get overlapping part codes, and it just becomes a mess. So it's, but we can do anything that our clients want us to do, and we will do that. So I'm not at all saying that we won't apply smart numbering. We do. It is just it's very costly. And a lot of that cost comes in the rework, because you have to go back and check what you did, and you have to make sure you applied the right part number. And you can't just make the correction from your computer or with the data. You actually need to go physically visit that asset in many cases to apply an appropriate barcode. But if you have a smart numbering system, I do want to mention that it's easy to convert to simple serialized. All you need to do is keep those smart numbers in place. Don't even do anything with them. It's just new assets that you bring on. You just integrate into this the simple serialized schema.
Matt, a question for you. There are some organizations where, for whatever reason, the deferred maintenance program and the FCAs are managed in one silo, and the CMMS and building operations are managed in another silo. Do you have any suggestions on how to break down those silos to make a more cohesive and coordinated program combining those two?
Yeah, and well, I guess some strategies that we've used is through the facility condition assessment process is to bring both of those individuals or those entities along for the ride together, especially on the maintenance technician side. There's a wealth of knowledge that comes out of operations that helps to inform capital renewal. And the only way you break down silos is through engagement and communication. So we like to encourage that they are involved heavily in the process, either by being physically with us in the process, or we're reporting back to them as a cohesive team, and they're part of a team that are helping to implement it. But yeah, good question.
Thank you, Matt. Let's see. A quick question for you, John. I know we are approaching the top of the hour. I think we might have one more time for this question. Some organizations feel that they are so dissatisfied with their CMMS that they made the decision, I'm just going to replace CMMS A with CMMS B because my CMMS A is not working. Is that the right approach?
I mean, it could be, but hopefully they're making that decision after a rigorous analysis, maybe even a CMMS optimization effort. There could be culture issues. There could be silos that can fairly easily be broken down. But again, I think culture issues, if someone's going to make a decision that quickly, I would probably, my first instinct would be that there's some silos and fiefdoms that might need to be very, very diplomatically broken down. See if you can get better access to your to the functionality of your CMMS. You might have a barrier being put up by a particular group that doesn't want to upset their apple cart. But again, I think the when you've got technical people dealing with data, their primary focus is applying maintenance. So getting them to work with data, just appreciate that it takes some training and it takes some culture change. You can't just tell somebody who has a particular skill set that they need to start doing something and expect them to do it. They might not be able to make the two ends meet and genuinely just are unable to track what they're doing. It just takes some training. So put some time into it. Don't make the hasty decision. See if you've got any culture issues. See if you've got make sure you've got all the functionality you want in your CMMS before making that decision, because it might be there. It just might be locked up somewhere in your processes and workflows.
Well, thank you both, Matt and John, for the wealth of information this morning. Here's the information on how you can contact Matt or John following the presentation, and this is the link that you will receive later to access the recorded webinar and access the presentation itself. And if you have any follow-up questions, please direct them to Matt and John. But thank you for your time today. And John or Matt, any parting comments before we adjourn this morning?
Thanks for joining us. And thanks, Matt and Lit. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy.
Happy asset management to everybody.
Yeah.